In 1996, I was living in a place that would forever change the way I would look at the afterlife. The price was noticeably lower than other rentals of a similar size. Somebody obviously not in the flesh had sneak attacked me, and it was unsettling to say the least. It was ready to play back its final, most violent recording. A son who lost his mind waited until his parents were sound asleep and ended it for both of them before the sun came up. Like, what in the world could this be that is happening to us right now? But honestly, I didn't really want to stay there anymore. And I got freaked out, and she says, I'm hearing a male voice in my left ear speaking right now. It waited until we were at our most vulnerable, when we were fast asleep in the master bedroom. At 1:40 in the morning, I could feel my spirit leaving my body just a millisecond after the gun flash. It was like this presence that was holding the gun was getting pleasure from this heinous act. You can't tell me that this wasn't spiritual. You can't tell me this wasn't something evil. Growing up in Brooklyn, you see some really messed up shit. These stories have haunted me for over 50 years. Now it's time to tell them. My one rule, I don't name names. These are the Brooklyn Files, the real stories. Brooklyn is built on layers of history and thereby layers of past lives of the people that live there. So most New Yorkers walk past ghosts every day without even realizing it. One of those places is Fort Greene Park in Brooklyn, where thousands of people jog every day, but many don't realize that they're running over a tomb holding the remains of over 11,000 bodies from the Revolutionary War. Another place like that, in the Bronx, you have Woodlawn Cemetery, which is considered one of the most haunted spots in the 5 boroughs. It was established in 1863 and over 300,000 people are buried there, including big names like Duke Ellington, Miles Davis, Irving Berlin, lots of old-time tycoons like R.H. Macy, J.C. Penney, F.W. Woolworth. Joseph Pulitzer is even buried there. In fact, over the years, many visitors and paranormal researchers have reported hearing faint music or feeling sudden temperature drops, even seeing apparitions and disembodied voices. I actually used to live a couple of blocks from Woodlawn Cemetery, and I've walked through it, and it's really eerie. Like, it's an unsettling place to be. But in a city as densely populated as New York, every apartment you've ever lived in has likely seen a dozen lives before yours. In some of the older apartments in Red Hook or Bushwick, you're looking at over a century of births, deaths, and everything in between, all happening within the same 4 walls. In 1991, there was a survey taken of New York City apartment dwellers that found that 1 in 5 residents believed that their home had some kind of unexplained presence in it. Most of the time, we just shrug it off as a draft, or we say that the building is settling, or we tell ourselves that the sudden smell of cigar smoke or an unexplained cold spot is just our imagination. But if you just look at the sheer math, a Brooklyn apartment isn't just a home, it's a timeline. Hundreds of people have slept where you sleep and sometimes left a piece of themselves behind. In 1996, I was living in a place just on the edge of Bay Ridge and Bensonhurst that would forever change the way I would look at the afterlife. I was 27 years old, and I just moved back to New York after a short stint living out of state. And my girlfriend had moved back with me, so we were looking to rent an entire house together. We'd been looking for a while and suddenly saw this place come up in the ads that almost seemed too good to be true. Like, the ad was for the entire house from a landlord who had just renovated it, and the price was noticeably lower than other rentals of a similar size. And that should have been our first sign of what the future had in store for us in this place, but there was no way of knowing that at the time. When we first moved in, the place felt like such a gift. Like, we'd been living with my girlfriend's mom and her sisters for a month or so after returning to New York, so to have our own place was a welcome change. The first thing that got on my radar about this place was when I would come home after work, and I would get home around 1 o'clock or so because I worked really early, and when I got home, I was the first one home. My girlfriend didn't get home until like 4 or 5, so there was this few hours between when I got home and when she walked in the door. And when I got home, I found 2 or 3 cabinets left open in the kitchen. And when she got home, I said to her something like, boy, you must have been in a rush this morning because a few of the kitchen cabinets were left open. Were you looking for something, or like, did you have a frenzied morning? And she said to me that it definitely wasn't her. And as soon as she said that, I got chills down my spine, and I thought, was there somebody in our place? Did somebody break in? Like when I pressed her by saying something like, are you sure? And she said something like, yeah, I'm sure. I didn't even pass through the kitchen when I left. And I knew that I hadn't done it myself, so that was weird, and I just kind of shrugged it off and didn't think too much of it. But a few weeks later, it happened again. And I thought that was really weird. There was nobody in our apartment. Our landlord didn't even live in the same borough. And I even decided to call him and ask him if somebody'd been in our place, like somebody maybe to do maintenance or something. And he seemed puzzled. He said, no, there's nobody that would have been there. I was hoping he'd say yeah, because I was freaked out. So I got a little worried, but tried not to think about it too much. But it definitely left me and my girlfriend a little unsettled at that point. The next thing that happened was when I started to really consider the paranormal angle for the first time. I mean, it was there in the back of my mind after the cabinet incident, but this next thing really had me thinking there was something going on in this place. So I came home from work one day and I brought some mail in from the mailbox and I placed it on the kitchen counter and I was just like reading this envelope. And do you know that feeling when you can feel somebody standing next to you? Like if you have your eyes closed, you could even sense that they're there. Like there's a few signs that there's somebody standing that close to you. Like not only do you feel or hear the airflow around you change a bit, but you could almost feel an aura, almost like a magnetic field next to you, or almost like you feel this static field of somebody being next to you. Or maybe it's a faint hint of body heat that you sense, but you just know there's somebody standing next to you without a doubt. It's almost like the way a bat senses or feels without sight, but it's kind of like the same thing anyway. Well, I'm reading the mail and it's in my hands, and not only do I feel all these sensations around me, but I feel this sensation growing as it's getting closer to me. And it's coming from the bedroom and it's heading towards me as I'm standing there in the kitchen, and I can see something coming at me in my peripheral vision, and I'm semi-aware of the sensation that's happening as if somebody's walking towards me. And then I even see this shadow casted onto the paper that I'm reading. So I felt and saw all of that, and so I was raising my head to say, oh, I didn't know you were home yet. Like I thought that it was my girlfriend. I thought she was like surprising me or like coming out of the bedroom to scare me or surprise me and be like, I'm home, but she wasn't there. And I look up and I'm freaked out. I'm shaking. I'm going, there was definitely somebody in front of me. I saw it in my peripheral. I saw somebody coming out of the room. I felt it. I heard it. Like I heard every sense of it. But she wasn't there. I was 1,000% sure. Somebody obviously not in the flesh had sneak attacked me, and it was unsettling to say the least. When I told my girlfriend about it, I mean, she probably thought I just needed some rest or something, or maybe I was dehydrated. I think she thought I was a little batty, to be honest with you. But when you combine that with the cabinets, I think even she thought it was very weird, and she began thinking that maybe there was something going on in that house. Until the next thing that happened, and then I think she was fully on board with the idea. So one evening, I think it was a Friday night, maybe 7 or 8 o'clock, the two of us sitting on the couch and we're watching a movie. The two of us begin hearing the door unlatch as if somebody put a key in the door. You could hear the lock turn, and then you hear the doorknob turn and you hear the door squeak. You heard the whole series of it, as if the door opened maybe 3 or 4 inches. You heard it just go, like that. And the sound was plain as day. We both heard it. We looked at each other as if in shock, as if to say, who the hell is in our apartment? Who's walking in our house? And I immediately said something like, hello? And I jumped up expecting to see maybe our landlord or something coming into our apartment, but the door was sealed shut when I got there. We both looked at each other like, what the just happened? Like I said, we both heard it clear as day. There was no mistaking where it was coming from and what it sounded like. It was a very distinct sound of somebody walking in our front door after opening it with a key, and there was nobody there. So we were both stunned. Both couldn't believe what we just experienced. She came to look, she saw there was nobody there. After the door incident, the atmosphere in that house, I gotta say, it started to shift. Like, it was no longer just this series of odd coincidences that we could just shrug off any longer. The energy just felt heavier, like the house was holding some dark secrets. Like the unexplained presence wasn't just passing through anymore, it was starting to feel combative, if you know what I mean. Like, we stopped hanging out in certain rooms, we started leaving more lights on, but as unsettling as the open cabinets and the phantom door openings were, they were just the warm-up. It's like whatever was in that house was done playing games. It was ready to show us exactly why the rent was so cheap. It was ready to play back its final, most violent recording. And it didn't happen in the kitchen or at the front door. It waited until we were at our most vulnerable, when we were fast asleep in the master bedroom at 1:40 in the morning. So the night started out as a normal one. I remember being really tired, sleeping extremely deeply, the kind of deep sleep that induces a very vivid dream. Like, most dreams fade the second you open up your eyes, but then there's the dreams that really rattle you to the core. Like, it's that rare kind of dream that feels so real, so physical, that long after you wake up, even days, weeks, maybe even months or years later, you don't just remember it, you still feel it like it was a real event. Well, picture having that dream and having someone stick a gun in your face and then pulling the trigger so convincingly that in the dream, and then even after you wake up, you're convinced that you were shot in the face. Like, I remember 20 seconds after waking up still thinking that, like, maybe it really did happen and now I'm actually dead. The only way to describe it is, in my entire 56 years on this planet, it was the realest dream I've ever had. It was like it really happened. That's how real it felt. So I had this dream. I couldn't see who it was that put the gun in my face because in my dream I was sleeping and somebody shot me in my sleep. I could, however, feel this evil presence behind the gun. It was like this presence that was holding the gun was getting pleasure from this heinous act. It was so disturbing and convincing that I could feel my spirit leaving my body just a millisecond after the gun flash. I can't tell you how upsetting this was. It was devastating. I turn around, I look at the clock, it's 1:40 a.m. I then turn to my girlfriend, she looks like she'd just woken up too. Neither of us said anything to each other at that point, but then we turned over, fell back asleep, and then I think it took me a little while to fall back asleep, but eventually I did. So the next morning, we get up, I think it was a Saturday morning, and my girlfriend is making waffles or something like that, and I'm sitting at the breakfast table, and she places the plate in front of me, and she places her plate down on the table. She sits down, we're sitting there. We're taking our first bites of food, and she's chewing, and she stops and she says, "You know, I'm a little tired this morning because I woke up in the middle of the night at 1:40 a.m., and I had this very disturbing dream." My girlfriend and I sitting at the breakfast table, and she says something to me that immediately catches my attention and started to make my heart race just upon hearing it. She begins telling me that at 1:40 she woke up because she had this incredibly disturbing dream. She says it felt so real. I didn't realize this, but she too had a hard time getting back to sleep, but she'd been lying there too for a bit. She begins to tell me about this dream that woke her up. The next thing she says is, "I dreamt that someone put a gun in my face and shot me to death." She said it was so sudden. She could see the gun in her face and then suddenly saw a flash. She said it happened so fast that she felt like it was an ambush. But she said it felt so real that she was convinced that she had been killed. Even after opening her eyes, she still thought that she was dead. I just started making these noises as if to be completely out of my mind, like shocked over what she just said. It was like I couldn't even string a sentence together. I just started blurting things out like, "Oh my God, like, are you serious? Like what? Like, what? Are you kidding me? What are you telling me?" Like things like that. And I couldn't even believe what she had just said to me. I realized right then that we were in the same bed at the exact same time, experiencing the exact same violent event. It was like we both tuned into a recording or something that had actually happened in that room. Like, what in the world could this be that is happening to us right now? I looked at her and I said, I had the exact same dream. I saw the gun, I felt the flash, I woke up at 1:40 as well. Whatever it was that caused that dream, it did it to the both of us at the same time. You can't tell me that this wasn't spiritual. You can't tell me this wasn't something evil. That moment changed everything. I don't even think we finished our breakfast. Like, you can't just go back to eating waffles after finding out you and your partner shared this high-definition experience of being murdered together at the exact same second. So I wasn't sure what the next steps were, but honestly, I didn't really want to stay there anymore. I knew that if something had happened in that house beforehand, maybe there was a dark past in this place, that it would pretty much be impossible to get out of the lease. I mean, we had already signed for a year. We were stuck there for another 9 months or so. And at this point, I think I was actually afraid to find out if there was some kind of weird history in this place. I mean, this house was built in the 1930s or so the likelihood of something terrible happening there was probably pretty high. Besides the law states in New York that a landlord doesn't have to disclose any hauntings or murders in a home unless it's specifically asked of them. They're not legally obligated to volunteer that information. And the time had already passed where we would have been able to get out of the lease, so even if we knew something, it would be pointless. It would just terrify us. For the next several months, more strange things began happening. We found that we would get very irritated with each other for no reason, and we would start to argue to the point where the arguments were beginning to get louder and louder and even angrier. And it was out of character for both of us. We didn't fight like that until this apartment came along. Another thing that happened in the following months, we were sitting there, same breakfast table, one morning, and all of a sudden my girlfriend, she begins cupping her left ear. And I looked at her like, are you okay? I thought she had an earache or something. And she doesn't say anything for a couple of seconds. And then with this really shocked look on her face, she says to me, oh my God, do you hear that? Like something like that. She's like, oh my God, do you hear that? I didn't hear anything. And I said something like, hear what? And she says, you don't hear that voice? And I said, are you okay? And I got freaked out. And she says, I'm hearing a male voice in my left ear speaking right now, and I can't believe you don't hear it. She said she couldn't quite make out what the voice was saying, but it sounded like it was almost like she was hearing this like a radio broadcast or something from another dimension. It was seriously one of the creepiest things I'd ever seen. Like, she looked pretty freaked out herself, but I believed what she was telling me. She looked horrified. The look on her face didn't lie. She looked traumatized, in fact. So it was at that point when I decided that I couldn't take anymore. I had to know what the hell was going on in this place. I wasn't just gonna keep living there if we were gonna be experiencing weird stuff like this. So it got to the point where you just never knew what was gonna happen next, and it always had us both on edge. We were freaking out on a regular basis, actually. We were not ourselves. We were falling apart, to be honest. I decided to just go to the source. There was an old guy named Sal who lived like 3 doors down, and he was a neighborhood fixture, maybe 60 years old or so. And he was always on his front stoop making conversation, talkative guy, friendly, outgoing. And at some point, I remember he'd mentioned to me and my girlfriend that he'd lived in that same house since he was a kid in the 40s. So I caught him outside one afternoon, and I just started making small talk about the apartment, hoping to get something out of him. And I mentioned that the place had this like heavy feel to it. And I said a few weird things have been happening in that place. And I didn't go into detail at this point, but I said something about waking up from some weird dreams. And he stops me in mid-sentence, and he looks me dead in the eye, and he asks me, which room are you sleeping in? I'm talking to this neighborhood guy, Sal, a few doors down, and he knows this neighborhood well. He lived there since he was a kid. And after he asked me what room we were sleeping in, I told him we were in the back bedroom upstairs, and he got real quiet. And he starts telling me that when he was about 17 years old, back in the mid-50s, a son who lost his mind waited until his parents were sound asleep, He walked into that back bedroom and ended it for both of them before the sun came up. He shot them while they were sleeping. The most shocking thing that he told me was they were pretty sure the killings happened between 1:30 and 2 in the morning. My girlfriend and I had that horrifying dream at 1:40 a.m. He also added that back when it happened, he remembers something in the newspaper about the son claiming to have heard a male voice speaking in his ear. I can't even describe the chills I got after Sal said those words. I didn't need to see a single newspaper clipping or a police report to know he was telling the truth. We weren't just living in an apartment, we were living inside a tragedy that had been trapped in those walls for 40 years. It's one thing to hear ghost stories, but it's another thing entirely to realize you've replayed a murder in your sleep. We left that house as soon as the lease was up. We wasted no time, and I never looked back. I learned a hard lesson that year. In a city like New York, you're not just paying for the square footage. Sometimes you're paying for the history that they didn't tell you about.